This hearing in the Subcommittee on General Farm Commodities and Risk Management regarding the implementation of the Agricultural Act of 2014 as it relates to commodity policy and crop insurance will come to order. I want to welcome our witnesses, Administrator Willis and Administrator Dulcini. Thank you for being here, gentlemen, and thank you for all the good work that you've done so far in implementing the Farm Bill. By Tuesday of next week, most farmers across the country will have made the choices that we offered them under the Farm Bill. This will be the capstone on a long and challenging process that began here in 2010 before I was even elected and did not wrap up until February 7th of 2014 when the Farm Bill was finally signed into law. While the 2014 Farm Bill was drafted during a period of record high prices, producers are now experiencing a staggering 43% drop in net farm income. Current conditions are going to test the Farm Bill and its ability to mitigate and respond to growing financial stress in farm country. I firmly believe that the situation calls for the Farm Bill to be implemented in the most farmer-friendly manner possible within the limits of the law. The good news is that despite some bumps along the way, both of you and your agencies have worked overtime to ensure that the provisions of the Farm Bill are implemented in the best way possible for farmers and ranchers as it was intended to serve. And we thank you for your hard work. However, some serious issues remain that we hope can still be avoided, and we believe that you have the power to head them off. Each member around this dais probably has an example of problems his or her constituents face that can be averted through proper implementation, and I have three that I hope we can solve together. First, USDA has the authority to address an issue that's impacting all cotton marketing, whether through cooperatives, private merchants, or direct farmer marketing. The situation threatens to seriously erode support for cotton farmers when that support is already threadbare and chronically low prices continue to pose an existential threat to farming cotton in the United States. In Arkansas alone, cotton acreage is expected to be down 40% this crop year after record low plantings in previous years. Due in part to communist China and other countries that are propping up their own domestic production through rich subsidies and protections, the worldwide market has become artificially depressed, and this is harming American producers. And that's why report language was added to the fiscal year 2015 appropriations bill directing USDA to fix the problem. A legislative fix was unnecessary because the cost reduction options in permanent law already provide authority to correct the problem before it becomes even more serious. In this case, an ounce of prevention truly is worth a pound to cure. Second is the proposed rule on actively engaged. The rulemaking required under the Farm Bill authorized USDA to consider establishing limits on the number of farm managers for various kinds of farming operations. I didn't like the provision in the Farm Bill in the first place, but I took some comfort in the idea that the rule would be implemented in a flexible way, fully recognizing the variety of farming operations today, but limiting the number of managers on a farm to 1, 2, or a maximum of 3 managers is truly arbitrary and capricious and ignores the remarkable diversity and complexity in agriculture today. Finally, I know that there's ongoing work to provide rice producers and others a margin coverage insurance policy. As you know, coverage levels and participation rates among rice producers have been very low compared to other crops because the irrigated nature of rice production prevents any yield variability. Margin coverage is meant to help address this problem. We also specifically listed rice in the crop insurance title of the Farm Bill as an underserved commodity to focus RMA's attention on the risk management needs of rice producers. After years of low participation and recent news that basic revenue protection will not be available this year to rice producers, I hope you will do all you can to ensure that this new margin product works for rice producers in particular. These three concerns that I register are not meant to take away from my compliments to both of you on your overall handling of implementation. I have been impressed by your work. Rather, I bring these issues to your attention to highlight their importance to me, my constituents, and many of my colleagues. I hope we can work together to solve these problems before they become a lot worse. I'd now like to recognize my friend and ranking member for any comments he would like to make.
Well, thank you, Chairman Crawford, and I'd like to congratulate you on your chairmanship. We're certainly looking forward to working with you. You have a strong reputation of bipartisan problem solver, so I'm grateful to be working with you. Look forward to working with the rest of the subcommittee here. I'm very proud of the work we did on the Farm Bill. This committee scrambled through and found a way to put together a Farm Bill that we're hearing in the early stages is working. The farm programs are now more needs-based. There are stronger links to conservation initiatives, and we found budget savings in the process. The Farm Bill was well worth the effort we went through, and it's these members sitting here that that worked with their constituents to make it happen. Now it's our job to make sure we get it right. Implementation is the main focus. Getting the bill done, getting it through, and getting it signed was one part. And the two of you have a big part to play in that. I know you've got a lot on your plate, but I do want to say and echo the comments of my chairman that the producers in southern Minnesota have very favorable comments, and I think I would like to pass along to both of you, and especially those rank and file FSA employees who have been out there working long hours. It's very much appreciated, and we're hearing that. There's just a few days left. I'm going to use this as my public service announcement. We got a few days left on ARC and PLC, so let's get those finalized. And mainly what I'm hearing is it's tracking down landowners and it's making sure people know. But I'm very grateful for a very complicated and important choice for farmers. They had resources in you, and I think in the truest sense, you've been partners, as it should be, of helping producers do what they do best: feed, clothe, and fuel the world. Farm Bill paves the way for some new crop insurance policies, and this one I'm really looking forward to because we put an emphasis on some of our young and beginning farmer and ranchers, and I'd like to hear a little bit about that today. I'd also like to hear a little on conservation compliance. Farmers want to do more to maintain healthy soil, and if there's anything we can do, we should incentivize to do that. And I want to hear about some things I've always set up here and talked about, things like cover crops and how we encourage that, and see if there's some of those things that are working. So as we begin this first subcommittee hearing, I'm hopeful we'll hear about how the policies are working, and I think, again, Chairman Crawford summed it up right. It's our job to find those things what we can do better on and get some feedback and take that out and see if we can implement those. So, Chairman, thank you for holding this hearing, and I look forward to hearing from our witnesses.
Thank you, Ranking Member, and appreciate the opportunity to work with you again this year. I have time to recognize Chairman Conway, Chairman of the full committee. He's not here, so I will defer and move on, and we will recognize him when he arrives. I just want to recognize that our request, that members submit their opening statements for the record so witnesses may begin their testimony, ensure that there is ample time for questions. The Chair would like to remind members they will be recognized for questioning in order of seniority for members who were present at the start of the hearing. After that, members will be recognized in order of their arrival. Appreciate members' understanding. Witnesses are reminded to limit their oral presentations to 5 minutes. All written statements will be included in the record. With that, I am pleased to recognize Mr. Brandon Willis, Administrator of Risk Management Agency, United States Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C. Mr. Willis, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Chairman Crawford, Ranking Member Walls, and members of the subcommittee, I'm pleased to discuss the Risk Management Agency's implementation of the 2014 Farm Bill. I'm pleased to report that we've accomplished implementation of almost every crop insurance provision. I would like to express my gratitude for the hard work performed by the employees of the Risk Management Agency. To have the vast majority of this Farm Bill available to farmers less than a year after passage speaks to the professionalism and dedication of these employees. I'd also like to thank our partners who deliver the crop insurance program, the approved insurance providers. They have provided valuable input throughout the process that has led to an improved implementation, and their efforts throughout the process are appreciated. While there is work to be done, farmers and ranchers are beginning to utilize some of these new crop insurance programs and options. The Supplemental Coverage Option, SCO, and Stacked Income Protection Plan for cotton, STACs, were made available for the 2015 crop year. SCO is available for corn, cotton, cottonseed, grain sorghum, rice, soybeans, spring barley, spring wheat, and winter wheat in selected counties for the 2015 crop year, representing over 80% of the acres covered in the crop insurance program. RMA is looking to expand SCO to additional crops and additional counties next year. The new STACs program for cotton producers is currently available for every county that had a crop insurance policy for cotton, representing 98% of the cotton acres in the United States. RMA released the APH yield exclusion insurance product for 11 spring crops, nearly 3/4 of all the acres and liability within the crop insurance program. We expect to expand the crops that are eligible for this provision next year as well. Coverage level by practice and enterprise unit by practice were available to farmers for the 2015 crop year, beginning with spring planted crops. These new programs provide a farmer that produces a crop on both dry land and irrigated land the option to elect a different coverage level for each production practice or by enterprise unit. Coverage level by practice is now available for 36 crops. Enterprise unit by practice is available for 14 crops. The peanut revenue policy, which allows peanut farmers to cover their revenue, is now available. This policy was approved by the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation Board of Directors less than a year after passage of the Farm Bill. The beginning farmers and ranchers incentives were made available to farmers and ranchers beginning last fall. These provisions make crop insurance more affordable for beginning farmers and ranchers by providing a 10 percentage point reduction in premium, as well as a waiver of the catastrophic fees and additional administrative fees. The Farm Bill required RMA to offer a product to cover diversified farms. RMA developed the Whole Farm Revenue Protection Program, and the Federal Crop Insurance Board of Directors approved that last year. As a result, Whole Farm Program is now available in 45 states. To date, this option has been generally well accepted around the country. RMA is also making progress on offering organic price selections for all crops as required in the 2014 Farm Bill. RMA has eliminated the organic surcharge, added price selections for over 20 crops, and created the contract price addendum, which is available for 62 crops. Last year, nearly 10% of the organic policies utilized the contract price addendum in its first year. Overall, these changes have resulted in nearly a 10% increase in the number of organic acres covered by crop insurance. In an effort to ensure that producers continue to receive the crop insurance premium subsidy, RMA, with our sister agencies, NRCS and Farm Service Agency, have been working to develop comprehensive guidelines for farmers so it will be easier for them to comply with USDA conservation compliance requirements. The three agencies work together to provide information to respective field offices and develop material for all three agencies to inform customers of the new guidelines. Outreach efforts will continue this spring. Crop insurance benefits producers and rural economies. It benefits those outside of rural economies by supporting a reliable and dependable food supply system. It provides a safety net that allows farmers access to credit who may not be able to obtain credit otherwise. It protects farmers' bottom lines in a very volatile environment, but perhaps just as important, it provides peace of mind to producers who know that entire life work, or perhaps the work of generations, will not be undone by one unfortunate weather event. While the federal crop insurance program was already providing a strong safety net for producers, this Farm Bill made significant improvements that have been well received by America's farmers and ranchers. Again, thank you for inviting us here today, and I look forward to working with you. Mr. Chairman, I'll be pleased to answer any questions that you or other members of the subcommittee may have.
Thank you, Administrator Willis, and pleased to recognize our second witness today, Mr. Val Delsini, Administrator of Farm Service Agency, U.S. Department of Agriculture. Mr. Delsini, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. I appreciate this opportunity to provide information on the Farm Service Agency's implementation of the 2014 Farm Bill. We've implemented the Farm Bill programs in record time, providing safety net assistance to producers in every state within just a few months of the bill's passage. FSA's 10,000 plus employees, pardon me, at over 2,000 local offices are working long hours to provide the most effective customer service possible to producers as we finalize the push to enroll producers in the new Title I crop safety net programs. FSA focused its efforts early last spring on implementing the livestock and tree disaster assistance programs. These programs, which had been expired for nearly 3 years, were resumed approximately 60 days following enactment of the Farm Bill, 80% faster than in 2008. This assistance benefited a diverse array of producers who were hit hard by natural disasters, ranging from wildfire to drought. And FSA continues to process payments for 2012 through 2014 disaster programs, including the Livestock Forage Program, the Livestock Indemnity Program, the Emergency Assistance for Livestock, Honeybees, and Farm-Raised Fish, and Tree Assistance Programs. So far, FSA has issued approximately 600,000 payments to producers since last spring, totaling nearly $5 billion. The LFP program has accounted for the bulk of these payments, particularly to producers in the Plains states, but also across the country who've suffered from extreme weather conditions. LIP payments are helping producers who incurred livestock deaths, such as those affected by the Atlas blizzard that hit the northern plains in 2013. TAP payments are helping producers in Florida who are suffering from citrus greening, as well as orchard producers in other states across the country. And ELAP payments are helping many producers who do not benefit from other livestock disaster programs, including beekeepers suffering from colony collapse disorder. The 2014 Farm Bill made significant changes to FSA's safety net programs. The DCP and ACRE programs were repealed and replaced by two new programs, the Price Loss Coverage and Agricultural Risk Coverage programs. Participation in the base reallocation, yield updating, and election processes is rapidly progressing. The rate at which producers have made their elections at local county offices has jumped by 8 to 10% per week. And as of March 19, about 94% of farms likely to enroll in ARC and PLC, that is, those farms that enrolled in the DCP program, have made their base reallocation decisions, and about 77% of farms likely to enroll have made their election. We expect that these numbers will continue to increase significantly by the end of the month, and all producers who've contacted their local offices to file their ARC and PLC paperwork by the deadline will be allowed to enroll for ARC PLC for the 2014 crop year. Implementing a farm bill requires an all-hands-on-deck approach to reach producers, and much of this success is the result of close collaboration between our university and extension partners and, of course, the dedicated men and women of the Farm Service Agency. We worked closely with the university partners at Texas A&M, the Food and Agricultural Policy Research Institute, the University of Illinois, and others who developed online web-based decision tools so that farmers could input their data and explore various scenarios associated with adopting either ARC or PLC for their individual operations. Furthermore, we worked and are continuing to work with extension specialists in virtually every state on extensive ARC and PLC education and outreach efforts. As of mid-March, over 400,000 attendees have participated in approximately 5,700 local events, providing producers with an opportunity to think about how to best manage risk on their farms. The ARC and PLC web tools were demonstrated at over 2,500 of these events, and the tool developers are hosting help desk hotlines for producers who are in need of additional help. In addition to collaboration with these partners, we've had extensive interaction with the media and appreciate our partners in the ag media. FSA is making a final push to reach all landowners and producers who have a stake in these decisions. Early in this calendar year, we mailed nearly 3 million postcards to landowners and producers as a reminder about the upcoming deadlines, and stated that for those who didn't elect between ARC or PLC, they would default into PLC and would lose 2014 program benefits. We mailed another 2 million postcards in mid-March to owners, operators, and other producers who had linked at least one farm that had not made an election. And our county office staff, as you well know, is geared up and ready to greet these producers and help make their decisions in the final days. Under the 2014 Farm Bill, upland cotton is no longer a covered commodity and is not eligible to participate in ARC and PLC. Rather, it's eligible for the new STAX program offered by my sister agency, RMA. FSA has also implemented the new margin protection program for dairy, and over 23,000 dairy producers, that is half of all U.S. dairy operations, have enrolled for calendar year 2015 coverage. MPP offers dairy producers catastrophic coverage at no cost with a $100 administrative fee and then various levels of buy-up coverage. The Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program, NAP, was also expanded in the 2014 Farm Bill to include protection at higher coverage levels similar to provisions offered under the Federal Crop Insurance Program. NAP continues to offer coverage at the CAT level based on 50% of expected production at 55% of the average market price. Now, though, producers can buy up to 65% of the expected production in 5% increments at 100% of the average market price. The majority of 2015 NAP-eligible spring-seeded crops had an application period that closed earlier this month.
Administrator Dulcini, forgive me, but we're up against a hard vote, and I want to make sure we get our members an opportunity to ask some questions. So I just appreciate your indulgence here, and we'll submit the balance in the written testimony.
Thank you, Mr.
And I apologize for cutting you off there, but we do want to get going so we can get this done before we're called to votes. Administrators, thank you so much for being here, and again, appreciate your indulgence on this time constraint. Administrator Dulcini. As I said in my opening statement, I believe the limit you placed on managers in the actively engaged rule is arbitrary. In fact, it seems like the rulemaking might have been hijacked away from people like you who understand this country's diversity of ag production and written by folks who really don't know anything about it. In my opinion, the rule should allow for as many managers as justified by the operation's needs. Can you tell me if there was input on this rule from people outside of the USDA and how that input might have changed its course?
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to answer that question. As you know, obviously, we proposed a rule earlier this week that addresses for the first time since 1987 a definition of actively engaged within the confines of the statute, the 2014 Farm Bill. We believe that it's a good start, and over the next 60 days look forward to a lot of interaction from the public and others who are going to be impacted by this rule. It addresses for the first time the actively engaged definition, and we've included for the first time hours associated with being actively involved in the farming operation. It's either 500 hours or 25% of the time that it would take to manage that farming operation. We've allowed an additional pay limit if the operation is large or complex, and we've defined large as 2,500 acres or more. Complexity decisions will be made by the State Committee in conjunction with the FSA headquarters staff here. We've allowed a third pay limit for operations that are both large and complex. So the default limit is one pay limit, and then there are two additional pay limits. We think this is a good start. It's a strong rule. You know, we operated within the confines of what the 2014 Farm Bill gave us, and we look forward to receiving comments over the next couple of months.
Thank you, sir. Administrator Willis, I also made reference to this in my opening statement. The Farm Bill provided RMA with additional flexibility to develop products for crops that traditionally face low coverage levels, particularly rice. My constituents are eager for margin coverage to become available for the next crop year, but I have some concerns regarding how RMA is pursuing these policies. I believe you should be developing a rice-specific policy, as rice inputs are much different than other commodities because it requires higher levels of fertilizer and diesel fuel. However, we've heard you've been pursuing a one-size-fits-all margin product. Can you tell me what you're doing to ensure that rice will get the adequate coverage it needs and deserves?
Certainly. One of the positive things about the Crop Insurance Act is it allows private groups to submit products that addresses their needs. If we look in the last 4 years, the amount of buy-up coverage for rice has gone from 28% to 70%. That's just since 2008. A lot of that has become because of these products that offer and hit the needs that rice farmers have. We're working with the private submitter who submitted the margin program, and right now trying to come up with the details of that. My understanding is that as it stands, actually there is a flexibility to make sure that the margins of rice are reflected in how the policy operates, and you have my commitment to work with them to make sure that whatever policy comes out works for the producers it's meant to provide a safety net for. I think we all have the same goal on that front.
Thank you. Let me switch gears real quick. Talk about your work in implementing the supplemental coverage option that was authorized in the Farm Bill. Could you let us know what you're doing specifically to ensure that all the rice-producing counties have SCO available to them so that producers could get the full benefit of what was pledged under the Farm Bill?
Yeah, the Farm Bill also contained language that allowed RMA to use our own information instead of simply relying upon the NASA information, which is very good information, but sometimes we have some counties where we could offer SEO if we use our own information that NASA doesn't have that county level information. Moving forward, we will start to utilize that information. That will allow us to expand both crops and additional counties next year. Rice will obviously be a beneficiary of us using our own data, and our intent is to dramatically increase the number of counties that have SEO coverage for all crops, rice specifically as well.
Thank you, Administrator Willis. I now recognize Ranking Member Walls for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to have the gentlelady from Arizona start with the questioning on our side. Ms. Kirkpatrick.
Thank you, Ranking Member Waltz, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is my first appearance on this committee, and I'm really pleased to be here, so thank you. And administrators, thank you very much. I'm new to the committee, but agriculture is not new to my district. I represent roughly the eastern half of Arizona. It's a very large rural district. It ranks 28th out of the 435 congressional districts in terms of the importance of agriculture. As we have 13,500 farms, including very large cotton growers and a new industry in vineyards, as we start to become a winery state. Who would have guessed? And in my district. So, but I have a special interest in emerging farmers, especially veterans and Native Americans. So my district has 12 tribes, 25% Native American, and they'd like to get back into the farming business. So my question to both of you is, what are you doing specifically to get that information to veterans, to Native Americans? How can I assist you in doing that? I've set up a veterans working group in my district and also a Native American working group. And if there are specific things that I can take back to them to help these emerging farmers, I'd really like to know about that.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to answer that question, Congresswoman, and welcome to the subcommittee. As you may know, USDA has recently appointed a liaison to the veterans community. He's the Deputy Undersecretary for the Farm and Foreign Agricultural Services. His name is Karis Gutter. He's a Marine Reserve veteran. So Karis is leading an effort at the department to focus on veterans issues. With regard to the broader issue about pulling Native Americans as well as veterans into our programs at the Farm Service Agency, we spend a lot of time targeting our loan programs in particular on new and beginning farmers and those who've been traditionally underserved or poorly served by FSA programs historically, and that would include Native American populations around the country. I sit on something called the Council on Native American Farming and Ranching. It's actually meeting in Oklahoma this week, so I couldn't be at the meeting, but we spend a lot of time at USDA and particularly at the Farm Service Agency working with our colleagues in the department and across government to better serve all of our customers, including Native Americans and now the emerging veteran population that we have in this country. Be happy to work with your office to tell you a little bit more about what we're doing specifically in Arizona.
Let's do that. I'd be happy to meet with you and take some specific things back to my working groups. Administrator Willis?
Two things I'd like to mention. First of all, we have what we call risk management education that allows us to work with private partners who are in the region. They provide education, oftentimes they're schools, but many different groups will apply for this funding. And they're the ones who know a lot of these individuals, and we're targeting individuals who are underserved, just like Val talked about. So the education is one area. We want them to know what crop insurance options are available to them.
How affordable is crop insurance for emerging farmers?
Well, that was the next thing. One of the great things that was included in the Farm Bill is a incentive for beginning farmers and ranchers. Essentially, it reduces the amount they have to pay for crop insurance by 10 percentage points. That's a very big deal. That was one of the first parts of the Farm Bill we were able to make available. It should be available for all farmers now. It's for their first 5 years of farming. Obviously, when you're in your first few years, you might not have the equity built up that a more established farmer did. So I think we have the education to let them know about it, but because of the Farm Bill change you made, there's also some very real incentives for them.
Great. Thank you very much. I look forward to working with you. I yield back.
You want to use the balance of your time? Okay. I thank the gentlelady. Recognize the gentleman from Ohio for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Administrator Delsini, can you clarify for me, I think there's some confusion, FSA offices, county offices that have been closed, dealing with the farmers' records are moved to administrative counties, but then also their yield based for the ARC program. Which county is it? The administrative county they're in, or could it be the county that they're physically where their farm is located? Can you clarify that? There's some confusion on that, I think.
Sure, be happy to, sir. In fact, this issue was raised to me at the Commodity Classic in Phoenix several weeks ago, and I think we've worked on a solution that allows a farmer who farms in a specific county to use the physical location as their county of choice. FSA has closed some offices over the last several years, and that's created a situation I think that you've described and other members may have in their districts. I think the solution that we have, which is to allow a farmer to choose essentially the county based on the physical location of his or her farm, is the best way to go.
I would concur. Now, is there a deadline to make that selection? If they're in a county that the offices were closed and they've been moved to an administrative county to do administrative work, right, and let's say for previously the yields and everything's been moved for that count, based on that administrative county, they can select to have it in their county.
That's
you just said that. Now, is there a deadline or a timetable to have to make that selection, or how's that mechanism work?
Sir, I'll have to get back to you if there's a specific deadline associated with that decision. It will be available for the 2015 crop year, and perhaps my staff can pass me a note here while you're in the room, and I can give you a more fulsome answer to that. But I think what we want to do is make sure that a farmer who's interested in having his or her FSA paperwork in a given county and farms in that county should have the opportunity to utilize that local FSA office.
I agree, and I thank you, and I yield back, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
sir.
Thank you. Recognize the Ranking Member Walls for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you again to both for helping us understand what's going on. Mr. Dulcini, I wanted to start out. I know there's been some angst amongst relinking crop insurance to conservation compliance amongst some growers who didn't participate in other FSA programs. Have you reached out to those folks, and what are you hearing?
Sir, we have reached out to those folks who may not have what we call an AD 1026, which is our form indicating compliance with conservation rules and regulations on file. This has been a joint effort on the part of the two agencies in front of you, as well as our sister agency, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, to make sure that we're reaching out to specialty crop producers, whether they're in Minnesota or Central California or elsewhere in the country, that they have as much information as they need to understand the conservation compliance requirement and understand what it takes to come into an FSA office and attest to that. So I think we're on the right track. We're going to continue to do additional outreach in the weeks to come and look forward to continuing to work with
Mr. Willis, are you hearing that on the specialty crop folks?
Yes, we are, and we're working side by side on compliance, trying to make sure everybody who needs to know about it knows about it. From the risk management agency's perspective, we sent letters to a wide group of people who need to come in and get that form filled out. One of my employees just yesterday talked about how his local farm service agency office had sent 3 notifications on this issue. We also sent about a month ago information to the crop insurance companies, so when they're sitting across the table from producers who may not know about compliance, they can tell them about it. So I think we're trying to have a multi-pronged approach. Our goal is that every single producer that has crop insurance now has crop insurance in the future because they filled out the form. We want everybody to stay in.
I appreciate that, because this is one of those, they care deeply about their soil health, and I want to make sure that this compliance issue doesn't become a distraction from our goals of reaching that together. Mr. Willis, another one, and I know you hear this lots from members. Every year, things happen, like I had massive rains and wind last year, that make planting conditions, and the crops end up, it's difficult to get it in the ground. Then they bump up against the planting deadlines for crop insurance policies, and then we end up having to ask for extensions and things like that. Could you describe the process RMA uses to evaluate those planting dates, and how we go about changing or using them? Because it ends up being a lot of angst for a lot of people.
Yes, sir. In fact, I just had a meeting a few days ago up here, actually, with some members. I have a lot of sympathy for members from Texas, farmers from Texas, who have been in a drought for a few years, desperately want water, and unfortunately, they got too much water at one point in time. They're struggling to plant before the end of the planting period. So I have a lot of sympathy for that. How those timelines are set, we set using local information. We have regional offices. We have 10 of them around the nation. They'll work with the local producer groups, the local land grant, extension, the experts in the area, and they try to set the time period to be flexible, but essentially we want it to start when it's reasonable to plant a crop, and we want it to end when you shouldn't plant a crop after a certain point in time. The reason is, if we plant in those periods of time, you have the highest likelihood of success, and with that, obviously, crop insurance premiums can be lower because that's when you're supposed to plant a crop. Every year there are anomalous conditions somewhere in the nation, and it's very difficult, we understand. It does provide a little flexibility in as much as you can plant after the final plant date, but your guarantee how much you're insuring goes down about 1% a day. So if people feel like the dates need to be reevaluated, we encourage them to work with our local folks. Every year we do change some of these just to reflect changing conditions in each area.
I appreciate that. And I'd just like maybe for both of you, Mr. Dulcini, maybe you can speak to this. You've been traveling a lot. Each of us see our FSA offices. I think the gentleman's question was right. Consolidation and things, there's issues that came up in that. My concern, though, is how's the morale of those workers as this happened, as we have basically a smaller number of people in offices doing more work at this point in time. How are they responding across the country as you see it with their partners at the university?
You know, that's a great question, Congressman, and you're right. I do a lot of traveling. Since I came to this position, I've been to about 25 states, and I always go out to county offices and talk with PTs who've been there for 2 years in some cases, 30 years in others. I think morale is by and large good. You know, we've provided more resources to the field in terms of temporary employees. We've eased up on a hiring freeze that we were operating under, and we've provided more tools to them to get the job done. Obviously, the Farm Bill is a big job, and I wanted to make sure that my county offices weren't, kind of broken by the workload. There are offices that need a little bit more attention, that's for sure, but I think by and large, staff is feeling good because the relationships they have across the counter is really our competitive edge at the Farm Service Agency.
Very good. I yield back. Thank you, Chairman.
I thank the ranking member. Recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Willis, I actually majored in risk management and insurance, so while terms like loss ratio and adverse selection put most people to sleep, they actually wake me up. So I do look forward to working with you as we go forward and making sure that we have a crop insurance program that keeps good farmers in business in bad years. Our goal is certainly not to guarantee everybody a profit, or anybody a profit, I should say. I do want to speak briefly to the concern of actively engaged, and just going back through my life, my two grandfathers who both farmed towards the end of their life, it was their land, it was their seed, it was their tractors, but the fact of the matter is they were no longer physically able to do the majority of the work. And my fear is that when we get into these definitions of actively engaged, that we actually end up working contrary to what we should be doing, which would be to encourage more people to get into agriculture. And so I would also encourage you to take a look at the overall loss ratio and what that may do with regard to the crop insurance system, because those in the end may very well be the best risk that we have in the system, those who may not meet that definition of actively engaged, because being a good farmer is more than just being able to drive a tractor. It's growing a good crop, but I would suggest to you that being a good business person is probably more important than growing the good crop in today's global economy. So I look forward to working with you on those issues, and again, I would ask that you work with this committee and be very careful with that definition of actively engaged. If you look at our farm population, a lot of them are unfortunately older today and not capable physically of doing some of the workload that you may be asking them to do. Mr. Delsini, one of the things that I'm concerned about is counting crops that aren't harvested against a farmer's generic base. I have people in my great state of Georgia who plant wheat for grazing. They graze their cows on it. They never harvest the wheat, and then that is counted against their generic base. It makes no sense to me to count a crop that's not harvested against the generic base. Would you speak to this issue, and what do you anticipate the actions of Farm Services to be with regard to this?
Congressman, thanks for the opportunity, and I, just on the actively engaged issue, share with you a real concern about bringing a new generation of farmers and ranchers into the agricultural economy of this great country. And one of the things that we're doing every day at the Farm Service Agency is looking for new ways to make sure that we build up that important resource. On the question of cover on generic base, I think that we're in agreement that cover crops are a great option for many producers around the nation, and our sister agency, the Conservation Service, has a variety of programs that can help in that regard. I think that the Secretary was asked this question, and one similar to it, several weeks ago, and in that interim period we've consulted with the Office of General Counsel and just don't believe that there's a lot of room for us to maneuver on this particular question here. But I'd look forward to continuing to work with the staff and your office on it.
I think the majority of the members of the committee would disagree with the lawyers on this, and that I don't think we ever intended in the drafting of the Farm Bill for a crop that was not harvested to be counted against a farmer's generic base. If your attorneys are telling us that we need to have legislation to fix that, then I would think that there would be broad agreement among the committee to do that. But this is having a tremendous impact on a lot of people, and quite honestly, a lot of these people are the best farmers in America. So I'll look forward to further discussions on that. I am almost out of time, Mr. Chairman, so I'll yield the remaining 20 seconds of my time, but look forward to working with you to resolve that issue. It needs to be resolved sooner rather than later.
Thank you, sir.
I thank the gentleman, and I recognize the gentlelady from Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and I apologize for being late. Mr. Scott, do I get your 20 seconds? Is that how we're doing? Thank you, Congressman. First, thank you very much. I appreciate it. My family has deep roots in agriculture in Florida, so it's such an honor to be on this committee and serve on this subcommittee. I apologize if this question has already been asked, but following my election, I made a tour around the district, and I met with quite a few farmers. And there is still a confusion about the implementation of the Farm Bill. And so my question goes to that. I mean, how are your offices working in helping managing the transition and implementation of the new Farm Bill in districts such as mine, which is very rural? And they need some help in understanding what they're expected to do to meet the requirements of the new Farm Bill.
Thank you for the opportunity, Congresswoman. In the entire country, and certainly in the state of Florida, we've had a robust outreach effort beginning last spring when we rolled out the first Farm Bill program. Since then, we've rolled out successive programs and have incorporated similar outreach efforts which involve relationships with local land-grant universities, with cooperative extension offices, with Farm Bureau chapters, with commodity organizations, with congressional offices in some cases, and with others to ensure that producers understand these new and complicated programs. They're significantly different from the programs that the 2008 Farm Bill included. In some cases, they're brand new. And so we really wanted to make sure that there was enough understanding out there that folks could make well-informed and thoughtful decisions. To that end, the Farm Bill contained $100 million. We appreciate that for the development of web-based decision tools and other software that would help farmers in the comfort of their own home office or at the kitchen table, plug in their numbers and make a determination as to which program might be better. We've included a robust direct mail program. So, for example, that ARC and PLC programs, we've mailed close to 5 million postcards to ensure that folks know about public meetings, they know about program deadlines, and they know about other important issues associated with these decisions. So I think we've really done probably an unprecedented job at the Farm Service Agency in making sure that everybody who wants to know about these programs does indeed know about these programs. I'd just close by saying, the 5,000 public meetings that we've done have ranged from large, several hundred member, meetings in Montana. I did 5 meetings in 2 days a few weeks ago, to small county office-based meetings where a county director might be talking to 2 or 3 producers and answering essentially the same questions that we would do in those large forums. So we're doing a lot of good things around the country, I think. The response on our producers has been excellent, and it's really engaged our staff as well. I've got the hardest working public employees in the United States, I venture to say, and they've really put their shoulder to the wheel on this effort for the last 9 months, and we're in the home stretch now, and I think that things have gone pretty well.
That's really great to hear. I have some of the hardest working constituency service providers in Florida's 2nd Congressional District. Maybe we can put your hard workers together with my hard workers, so if there's still any questions for the farmers in my district, they can get answered. I appreciate it. My next question is about citrus greening in Florida and our citrus crops. Do you think there's enough being done to provide a safety net for these specialty crops?
On citrus greening, we've used our tree assistance program to provide assistance to those impacted by that horrible disease. Don't know, Congresswoman, that it's going to make them whole necessarily, but I think it provides important relief where relief previously didn't exist. As you probably know, we've got an energetic state director down there named Rick Dantzler, who's really been up and down the state to ensure that folks know about the TAP program for citrus greening, and that Rick and his team have done a battery of public meetings as well on that topic. I'd certainly be interested in working with your office if there's more that we can do, but I think that this is a good first start.
I appreciate that. Citrus greening has decimated our citrus crop in Florida, and it's sadly now making its way west. They're starting to see it some in California. So we need to find a solution to this quickly, not only for Florida, but for the rest of our citrus crops across the country. So thank you. I appreciate that. Last question on peanuts. And my district is the largest peanut producer in the state of Florida. Am I out of time? I see my red light went off. Can I finish my question, Mr. Chairman? What are you doing to improve the insurance options for peanuts? If you could just provide an update, I'd really appreciate it. And I appreciate your willingness to allow me more time, Mr. Chairman. Sure. Thank you very much.
Certainly, two things to comment on. First of all, the Farm Bill required a peanut revenue program. Historically, they'd only had a yield-based policy. We got that out this year. Bean producers are signing up for that, have been signing up for that. So far, we've heard positive comments on that. That's a very important thing for those producers. Second of all, we're looking to expand supplemental coverage option to many crops. Peanuts is one of those we're looking at. That would provide another option for those producers. So we're aggressively trying to expand the safety net for peanut producers.
Anything else to add? No? Okay, thank you. So I yield back the time I no longer have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I thank the gentlelady. I recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. LaMalfa, for 5 minutes.
I like how Ms. Graham deftly used that 20 seconds of Mr. Scott there, though. Okay. Let's see, I'll be coming to Mr. Willis after I ask Mr. Dolcini about the California's drought situation. We've had ranchers up there suffering from that, needing the drought relief. We did have some delay on implementing the drought relief in California, and a couple of our ranches were really having difficulties obtaining the funding, so it was being handled at the local level. Would you just comment, though, please, on the status of the disaster program and how it's being sped up there?
I think the program that you're referencing, sir, is the Emergency Conservation Program that's administered by FSA, and we have had some challenges in California because we need to do cultural resource background work for all of the various ECP applications. We've since contracted that work out, so I think that it's moving more rapidly than it had, and we're able to provide emergency hauling monies for drilling in some cases, and we had ECP contracts in your district certainly and all over the state of California.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Willis, coming back to Mr. Crawford's line of questioning on rice. It's a very significant crop in Arkansas, 1.3 million acres there, 500,000 acres in California, several other southern states growing significant amounts. So for it to be completely dismissed as lightly traded, which Chicago being maybe the basis for price discovery isn't really accurate because it's not heavily handled on those particular marketing situations there. So it was disturbing to me, as well as Mr. Crawford, on 2015 being a year where there won't be the revenue policy coverage for that commodity. Again, it's very significant in my district to many of my neighbors, and I'm a producer myself, so we pay attention to a lot of these issues. What can be put in place for 2015 and what's a volatile price market, as we see the price already compressing for rice this year as the marketing year plays out for 2014 crop, and what the effect will be on 2015? Even with drought, it's doing that. What can we do to or how can you elaborate on what we can be doing to have a revenue policy available for 2015 for a very significant crop in this country?
Yeah, certainly. As we talked about earlier, obviously we've come a long way with rice. Those changes have resulted in producers participating in the program. Unfortunately, this year, as you talked about, the revenue option was not available. We are already trying to find a solution for that.
Excuse me, was not available. I mean, the Farm Bill passed with that intention. I supported it. I supported removing direct payments, and so there's an implied promise there, I guess, with direct payments, again, happily being gone. My growers are supportive of that, and I think many of the others around the country. But this was supposed to be that basement, that safety net on low prices, and now hearing that they're not available in 2015, I'm going to have to answer to a lot of folks around the state and the country on why that safety net's not there.
The rice policy was not a result of the Farm Bill. It's been around for many years before that.
But again, with the direct payment being eliminated.
Yep. Yeah. The contract, the crop insurance contract that was set, had specific parameters as far as number of trades, et cetera. That's used to set a price and also to set how much to charge for the policy. Unfortunately, those weren't met. There was kind of a fallback option. Unfortunately, that wasn't met. So what we need to do is find a solution long term, because I agree 100%, sir. Our producers have come to count on crop insurance as a dependable safety net that provides timely assistance. They went in this year to buy revenue policy, and unfortunately it wasn't there. We're going to work to fix that in the future. I recognize the issue, and I'm happy to have further discussion on that, because we share the same goal, which is a revenue policy every year for rice producers.
What are growers to tell their bankers and their lenders this crop year when they see perhaps that is not a tool to ensure a basement for 2015?
This year it's not available. Yield coverage is available for them. I've talked quite a bit.
Yield coverage is quite a different animal than revenue, and so
it is. And your point is very valid, in as much as every producer has a different risk they're trying to protect. Yield coverage for rice is not as valuable as revenue.
So we're seeing no solution for 2015. It's over with, or is that something we can cobble together as we can move swiftly around here once in a while?
We're looking for a solution for 2016, sir.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the gentleman, and votes have just been called, so we will suspend. I'm going to ask our witnesses, Administrators Willis and Dulcini, if you would, to stand fast momentarily. This is a single vote in this series. We'll get over there and get back and resume, and Mr. Allen will be the first recognized. And we will briefly adjourn. Recess, not adjourn. All right.
Pope likes the farm
To our witnesses, I want to thank you for your patience as we resume. Appreciate your indulgence on that brief recess. It's my privilege to recognize our distinguished full committee chairman, Mr. Conaway.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that, and I apologize for the getting out of order here, but I had a markup in another committee this morning that I'm not the chair of, so I needed to be there for a quorum. And as chair, you'll appreciate quorums as you move through this issue. I know that
Absolutely.
the really distinguished chairman beside you is appreciative of that. I'm going to ask unanimous consent to enter my opening statement into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. And again, it's been my intent to join each of the subcommittees on their first hearing to let the folks know how confident I have in your leadership and Tim's as well on the ranking member side. You guys have a terrific responsibility. It's pretty broad and very important, and I've got great confidence in you and your leadership and Tim's help that we'll get the proper oversight done over the implementation of the Farm Bill as we move forward and other issues that come up. And you're a great member, and I appreciate you agreeing to take on that responsibility. So thank you very much. If I could, I'd like to ask you just one quick question, and then we can get back to your regular order.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Dolcini, thank you for being here today. If I'd have read my opening statement, I would have mentioned something about yields, assigning yields on generic base. We don't need to go into a long back and forth about irrigated, non-irrigated, all that kind of stuff. But what I'd appreciate getting from you is some sort of affirmation that you'll continue to work with the various parties that are trying to avoid any kind of unintended consequences that we have as we implement this program on the generic basis and base acres as we move forward. And I know it's difficult, but if you'll give me some sort of affirmation that you understand the problem and that you're willing to work with the folks.
We do understand the problem, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to continue to work with your staff and with you on this.
Okay. I mentioned both of you to you and Mr. Willis earlier. Thank you for the hard work that you and your teams have done. You guys get the credit. A lot of other folks did a lot of hard work. I know how that works. You've done a terrific job, in my view. Some very difficult implementation process. There are a few things left to get done, and I hope that we don't allow our conversation about that to taint all the hard work that went into getting this place. All those things that didn't rise up to be a problem because you guys took care of them to the satisfaction of the producers and everyone involved. So thank you for the hard work, and we've got a few things left to fix. You know it, and I appreciate you agreeing to continue to help be open to the comments that those who have concerns about particularly this base acre allocation on generic base, that we can get that worked out. But again, thank you both, and please extend my thanks to your teams as well for the hard work that they've done in getting us to this point. So that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back and let you get back to regular order. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you being here. And I recognize the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Abraham, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll echo a lot of the sentiments of my colleagues on the committee here that both our farmers and ranchers are probably the best stewards of the land than any agency or conservationists or environmentalists. They're going to take care of their own, their land, and family. And on the crop insurance thing, it is so important to my district in LA5 up in the northeast corner of Louisiana, because we know that what the crop insurance does is just hopefully, if we have a bad year, makes us bankable for one more year. And that's the way we look at the crop insurance program for us. I still actively farm corn and soybeans on my property with my son-in-law, who is the manager, so we understand the family-based farm deal. Just a couple of questions on cotton, because up in my district, we still actually have quite a bit of cotton in northeast Louisiana. Administrator Willis, are you planning to review the timing of the stacks indemnities? And cotton is harvested over several months of the year. It starts first in South Texas and it moves on into our region. And it seems to me to make logical sense that these growers would receive an indemnity earlier, since the necessary county data is available. So is there something you'd be willing to help us with?
Yeah, we'll be happy to have a discussion on that matter. We actually have some plans to work with some producer groups to see when the earliest we can. I don't know exactly what flexibility we have, but we're happy to have a discussion on that, sir.
Okay, fair enough. And just one more quick question on cotton. Between 60 and 70% of the cotton is marketed through the cooperatives that utilize the marketing loan program. And this is, for us, an important tool regardless of the price of cotton, which, as you know, right now is fairly low. However, now that the marketing loan gains and loan deficiency payments are included in the payment limit, producers and marketeers are concerned that this could adversely affect the cotton marketing system. Why isn't the USDA using its authority to remedy this?
Mr. Abraham, thank you for the opportunity to answer that question. We understand that the application of payment limits to marketing loan gains and LDPs does represent a change, especially for the cotton industry. We've been working with the National Cotton Council for some time now to provide a system that allows for an accurate recording of marketing loans and LDPs in real time, so cotton producers better appreciate, the ramifications of various financial decisions in front of them. We've begun that process this month, in fact, and I was just informed last night that we processed a variety of files from cotton companies and have begun the back and forth with verified customer data and are beginning to establish the reporting process so that the companies better understand what the situation is. Again, I'd be happy to come back to your office or the subcommittee and discuss this further.
Okay, we'll take you up on that. Thank you much. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the gentleman, and I am pleased to recognize the former committee chairman and my de facto policy mentor, the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate those kind comments and the kind efforts of both you and Mr. Walls over an extended period as we put the wondrous, amazing thing called the 2014 Farm Bill together. With that, Mr. Docini, I'd like to visit for a moment about, and I know an issue that was touched on in the context of grazing by my colleague, Mr. Scott, but I'd like to visit with you about an issue I brought up in February with Secretary Vilsack about cover crops when he appeared before the committee. And at the time, FSA had decided that crops planted for cover on generic base would be ineligible for ARC and PLC. My concern was that this would serve as a disincentive to planting cover crops. Could you walk me through the progress you've made in addressing this inequality issue and making sure that producers can choose whether or not to count cover crops as acres towards their generic base?
Sir, I appreciate the opportunity to respond. Let me first extend my sympathies to the people of Oklahoma on yesterday's tornadoes. I've been in conversation this morning with Francie Tolley, who you know is our state director.
Wonderful state director.
She's a wonderful state director. There were no harm to FSA service centers or other offices, and we're certainly ascertaining what the extent of the damage is out there, and we'll be happy to help however we can.
Of course.
Farmers and ranchers have been affected. With regard to the cover crop question, and I addressed Mr. Scott's concerns a few moments ago on this as well, we think that cover crops are wonderfully beneficial to the American working landscape around the nation, and NRCS has a number of good programs that support that. We just felt after the Secretary and you and other members exchanged in that conversation earlier this year, went back to the Office of General Counsel, and just don't feel as though there's a lot of room for us to maneuver on that issue, sir.
Well, I'd like for you to continue to look at it, and as the chairman of the subcommittee noted, I had just a little bit involvement in putting the language together. And that was very much the intent, I think, when we put the language together and make that possible. But I appreciate that point, sir.
Thanks, sir.
And a couple of other comments. On the point about establishing yields for ARC and PLC on generic base, I'd like to simply reiterate the comments that some of my colleagues I know have made earlier, that we want the market to drive the decisions producers make. So it's incredibly important that the yields FSA establishes are appropriate and are reflective of the significant differences between irrigated and non-irrigated. Because in the areas where those are circumstances, it really hugely makes a difference. And I just make that point, and I know you're working on those issues. And one other thing along that, I, in all fairness, would like to thank you for your help in ensuring that the peanut producers who were impacted by the Clint Williams bankruptcy are able to remain in the marketing loan. That's been a very bad situation for everyone involved. And I simply ask that you continue to keep the well-being of the producers in mind, as you have so far, I must enthusiastically say, as you tie up all the loose ends. Thank you again for that. And with that, I'd turn to Mr. Willis for a question and a thought. And I can't thank you enough for your efforts to get the APH adjustment. I know we now kind of like to refer to that as the yield exclusion out the door for the spring planted crops. And that in addition to all of the other new provisions, all the things you've got to do. But I noticed in the first page of your written statement about implementing the actual production history yield exclusion ahead of schedule. And I, in all fairness, living on the east side of the Rockies and the southern plains, representing the north half of the great state of Oklahoma, I'd note that some of my wheat growers are very much sensitive about being left out last fall, and in my town meetings explained that to me with a bit more gusto than perhaps we'll discuss it here in this polite environment. Was that well worded, Mr. Chairman? Thank you. Can you assure me that the yield exclusion and the coverage levels by practice will be in place for wheat planted this fall?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. We can't be stepchildren twice in a row. Thank you. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman from Oklahoma and recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Allen, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to talk a little bit about peanut hay here. The pasture, rangeland, and forage crop insurance program is designed to assist livestock and hay producers during a time of declined rainfall. The difference in this program and other crop insurance programs is it does not require a disaster to receive benefits. The program pays an indemnity when the historic rainfall of an area falls below the average based on the coverage selected by the farmer. Producers can select a maximum of 6 intervals per year or a minimum of 2 intervals per year. And if you look at hay, Georgia's PRF county base values are well below that of our surrounding states in Florida, Alabama, and South Carolina with respect to those states. With Georgia being the leading producer of peanuts nationwide, many believe the high amount of peanut hay is negatively impacting our values. While our state cannot specifically point to peanut hay as being the culprit, UGA forage specialists believe that this is the reason. In determining their values, RMA gets their data from NASS field surveys, and I think they're on page 8 of the NAA survey attached. Many of my hay farmers believe peanut hay should be listed as a byproduct and not included in regular forage. Peanut hay is sometimes fed, but typically not sold. It doesn't have the quality of other high-quality hay produced. I believe there have been some talks about this at RMA, and are you familiar with this dilemma we've got there in Georgia?
I have heard about the issue, but I certainly am happy to look into it and get back to you on the specifics. We certainly want to have all of our programs reflect the accurate price and to reflect what farmers, ranchers have lost. And if we need to make some changes, we'll certainly talk about that and see what we can do to make sure it works for them.
That would be great, Mr. Willis, and if you could submit that response to me in writing, I would really appreciate it so that we can take it further. Also, USDA has previously commented that RMA will strongly consider offering SCO for peanuts in 2016. Will peanut producers have the option to purchase an SCO policy for 2016?
We're looking at nearly 40 additional crops and running the analysis. If there's data, I would suspect for peanuts, it's obviously a widely grown crop. If there is that information that we need, yes, we will offer it.
Yeah. And from everything we hear, we're going to grow more peanuts in Georgia this year because of our cotton issues. But while we're talking about cotton, I would like to commend the department for their implementation of the new stacked income protection program, the yield exclusion provision, and enterprise units by practice for the 2015 crop. These are tremendously important insurance products for cotton farmers, and I appreciate the time and effort the Risk Management Agency put into the timely implementation of these new insurance products. As you look at ways to improve stacks ahead of the 2016 crop contract change dates, one issue I believe needs to be addressed is RMA's requirement that a producer must include all cotton in a county in the stacks policy being purchased. I believe eliminating or modifying this requirement would be extremely beneficial for growers who farm both dry land and irrigated cotton, thus giving producers maximum flexibility in tailoring their insurance purchases to their risk management needs. Is this something RMA will look at in the future?
Yeah, in the near future, we intend to talk about a few issues such as that one. While the vast majority of people are happy with everything we did with implementation, if there are outstanding issues that we need to discuss well ahead of time for next year, we're happy to discuss those. The reality is this program needs to work for producers, and we want to have those discussions.
Okay, good. Well, thank you, and I yield the remainder of my time. Thank you, Mr. Willis. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman from Georgia. I'm pleased to recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Nagelbauer, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and for holding this important hearing. And I know that Chairman Conaway was by here just a while ago, and I want to associate myself with his conversation about the yields that are being applied on covered commodities on the generic acres. We need to get that right so that farmers are going to make decisions based on what is good economics, and that our program is not steering them to one particular area or not. So I know that you're working on that, and I think it's important work, and so we would encourage you to continue to do that. Mr. Dolcini, Secretary Vilsack was back by here, I guess, last month, and we were talking about the marketing loan issue, and I know that's also been brought up, but that's extremely important to the producers in my district, and being able to ascertain where they are in the process. And so I don't know what your answer to that has been previously, but I know that it's certainly, when I was back in the district, that a lot of the producers were concerned about that. And Secretary Vilsack indicated that y'all are working on that. Is there an update on where you are on that?
Were you referring to cotton specifically, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, we are working closely with the National Cotton Council to provide better real-time data for them so that they understand the ramifications of marketing loan gains and related financial issues, and have begun, in fact, this week to exchange information with them. We think that it's a good first step solution, and we'll continue to work closely with them.
And you'll get that information out to the producers?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Mr. Willis, I think it was just mentioned a little bit about enterprise units. And one of the things I think some of us were disappointed is that I think it was the intent of when we were doing the Farm Bill is that you would be able to, choose and you have by practice, but what we're hearing now is that the current policy is if I put my irrigated in the enterprise, I have to put my dry land and vice versa. And, I think we've had previous conversations about that, and it was not our intent to do that. What we were trying to do is give producers as many choices as they can. But can you give me any update on what RMA is doing to address this issue?
I think that would fit in the category of some of the issues that we're looking at in the future. The interim rule was implemented as you just discussed. We have not issued a final rule on that specific provision or any others yet. So we can still have some discussion on that, but there's nothing else at this point in time other than it's kind of in the category of things we want to make sure that people are happy with to the best that we can.
Well, thank you, because that's extremely important. And one of the things that, I think the whole intent of the Farm Bill is to give producers as much flexibility and choices as they can so that they could tailor the various programs to their particular operation. And so it's, I think, one of the things we're hopeful that that will happen sooner rather than later. I do want to commend both of you for, I think, you've done a good job of, taking the Farm Bill and trying to implement the changes. And I think one of the things that's been very encouraging is that the number of tools that you've tried to provide for producers, because they were making some very important choices. And so I think the outreach has been good. We do hear a little bit that the FSA officers are a little bit swamped right now, and obviously got an important deadlines coming up on March 31st, and I'm hopeful that we can get everybody processed by that time. But if for some reason you've got a big waiting list on March 31st, what's the plan?
Well, the plan, sir, is to do what we've done historically, and that's use registers in our county offices. So a farmer needs to contact his or her local FSA office prior to the deadline to say, look, I just can't get in by the deadline, but I want to come in and make my election or do my reallocation. And I anticipate that we'll use the month of April to clear up the register. In addition, there are other states, sir, that are a little ahead of the process, and I'm going to be looking to send jump teams from some of the states that have completed most of their work down to places like Oklahoma and Texas that are not only looking at a lot of ARC and PLC related work, but a lot of LFP work from 2012 to 2014, and of course 2015 LFP has triggered. So your home state and certainly others have a fair bit of work on that program alone.
Yeah, well, I was glad to hear you say that, because that was going to be one of my suggestions, is if you need to put some folks, move some folks around to make sure that we get that done, because it's going to be planning season, and it's getting close time to have all of these issues resolved.
That's right. We've really used temporary employees quite well around the nation, and appreciate the fact that there was money in the Farm Bill last year for FSA to hire temporary employees. But that only goes so far, and really what I want to be able to do is, move folks around the nation who can help out in places like Texas and Oklahoma and other states looking at a pretty big workload.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank the gentleman, and recognize the gentleman from Alabama for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Administrator Dulcini, as you know, USDA recently released the actively engaged rule to determine which persons associated with a farm are eligible for farm program payments. As you work on the rule, I hope you'll address the concerns of some of my farmers who worry it may be written too narrowly to exclude members of a farming entity who should, in fact, be eligible. Can you address that concern and kind of tell me the status of where you are with that rule?
Absolutely, sir. As you know, the rule was announced earlier this week. It is a proposed rule, and there'll be a 60-day comment period for folks to weigh in on what USDA has proposed. This is the first time since 1987 that we've sought to better define the actively engaged rule. The default limit is 1 payment per farm, with the opportunity for 2 additional payments to be made to that farm depending on its size and/or its complexity. What we've also required this time around is that a person receiving a pay limit has to be substantially involved in the active management of that farming operation. They've got to keep a log to demonstrate the work that they're doing on labor issues, finance issues, marketing issues, agronomics issues, and they've got to show that they've got either 500 hours or 25% of their time associated with the operation of that farm in order to receive a pay limit. But we think it's a good, strong rule. It's a good first step. It was crafted within the confines of what the 2014 Farm Bill spoke to, and we look forward to a robust comment period, sir.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Willis, when the Agriculture Act of 2014